Okay, so welcome to this video where I will quickly show how you can find the overlapping interval between two different intervals. So, say we have a timeline here, or a numbers line, whatever you want to call it, where we will start at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on, say 8, 9, and 10. So we can define two different intervals. We can start with, let's say, the first one from 2 to 7. So we have from 2 to 7. And we will take and define the other one from, what is this, 4 to 10. Okay, so we need to see if these two intervals overlap, which they obviously do, from this point until this point. So how do we do that? How do we see if they overlap? Well, there is a cool way to do it where we look at the maximum value between the two leftmost boundaries, or the start of both intervals. So we take the maximum of those values, and that needs to be less than or equal to, depending on if you want the boundaries to count as part of the overlap, to the minimum value of the leftmost or the end of the intervals. So in this case, we would take the maximum value between 2 and 4, which is going to be 4. And we need to see if that is less than or equal to the minimum value of 7 and 10, which is 7. So if this evaluates to true, then we have an overlap. And this one will work, and you can set up multiple cases and it will always be true, because essentially this one looks to see if one of the intervals begins before one of the other interval ends. So that's essentially what it's doing. So you can use this for numbers, for dates and times, anything where you have two different intervals that you need to figure out if they overlap, and then we will look at how you can see how they overlap. Okay, so let's jump into Visual Studio, where I have just a console application here. So first, we need to define our two intervals. So we will make an int. We'll just call it start. We'll start at 1. Let's just make the example we just had. So that was 4 and 10. Let's do that. An int end, which is going to be 10. We're going to make a start 2, which was, let's say, 2 and 7. And start 2, end 2 will be 7. So these are the two intervals. Here up we have 4 and 10, which is the one we have right here, and then 2 to 7 we have here, which is the one we have defined right here. So these two intervals should provide an overlap. So in order to see if they overlap, we use the math function, and we take the maximum value of our start values on both intervals, and we see if that is less than or equal to the minimum value of both ends of the interval. Now, if this is true, we can say that they overlap. And if it is not true, we can say that there is no overlap. So let us take this for a spin. Now these intervals, they should overlap. So let's see if we get that result. And we do. We can see it says they overlap. Awesome. Okay, let's just try and set two intervals that doesn't overlap. So 4 and 10. We can take 1 and 3. They should not overlap because this one is before this one begins. And we have no overlap. Let's try to go to the other side. So 11 to 15. And we have no overlap. Now, if I do set this at 10, so this one starts right where this one ends. Let's see what it says in that case. It says they overlap. And so if you want that behavior, great, you can just leave it. If you don't want that to count as an overlap, you just remove the equal sign and they will no longer overlap. So that depends on your needs. Okay, so let's say we have an interval that does overlap. Let's take the original one. So that was 4 and 10, 2 and 7, 4 and 10, 2 and 7. So if we look in here, they will overlap with so between 4 and 7, right? That's the overlap. So if we want to calculate that, we can do that at the point where we actually figure out that we have an overlap. And now just look at this. Visual Studio actually recommends exactly what we're looking to do. It shows us the overlap start, which is right here. And so I can just tap and use that code. And on the next one, it will show me the overlap end. There we go, beautiful. Tap it out, enter again, console right line, I just tap, and it finishes off everything. So that is just the power of Visual Studio. It's incredibly powerful. But let's just walk through and see what it's doing. So essentially, the overlap start is just what we're calculating up here. That is the point where they start to overlap, you know. So we know that if this part is true, that means we do have an overlap. So we know in that case the maximum value of the two starts, which is going to be this one right here, we know that that is going to be the start of the overlap, right? It will always be true. So that will be the overlap start. Now the overlap end will be at the minimum value of the ends. So again, the minimum value of the ends, which is this one, and that will be the end of our overlap. So I will bet if I just press enter now, it will recommend the overlap end, there we go, and show it to us. So if I press play, we get the overlap start, and we get the overlap end. And this works with any sort of interval. This could be date times, they could be integers, they could be, you know, any number of things. As long as it's an interval, you can use this method to figure out if they overlap and also when they start and when they stop to overlap. So that's just it. I just want to share because I just used this in a recent problem I had to solve. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.